We've stopped here because we've noticed quite a lot of signs of activity, but it's always worth looking at obvious entry points to the woodland that aren't the tracks that people tend to use. So we've got a bit of a gap here and there's not a lot of undergrowth. So as you come walking through the woods, you're kind of drawn to the light here. You can see there's an obvious opening. And when we look a little bit closer as we're walking up, we can see the top of the little bank here is quite well worn. Now when we look up close, the first thing I noticed is we've got a little muntjac track in here, so we can just see the two halves of the foot. So this is a hoof foot, two cleats, so we can see the ridge up the middle. We've got one cleat there and one cleat there, and actually there's the impression of a couple more tracks, one here and another one registered on top of each other there, and there's also another one here. So we can see that the deer have obviously been, by the looks of it, running along this. Now at the same time, we've had some squirrel activity here. So this is a pine cone that a squirrel has ripped all of the scales off of to get at the little seeds underneath. So each scale, and here is a couple of them, each scale on the underneath side has got one little seed that sits there. The dark bit is where the seed was, and the seed has a wing, a little bit like a sycamore seed but smaller, and one sits there. So for each one of these that the squirrel tears off, it gets two little seeds, and it takes them all off the cone, and it leaves quite a ragged appearance. Now if this was a mouse, then this would be much neater, because they're not big enough to tear the individual scales off. They have to gnaw across the base of them, so you get a much neater finish. We can also tell that it was a squirrel apart from that appearance, because it's actually been dropped on the floor here, and the squirrel's been feeding up here. And if we just pan in with the camera, we can see what we might call his feeding table. So he's sat on here ripping off all of these scales. He's got a good view all around, and then if he needs to, he can run off up the tree, and he's had time to finish his entire cone. So we've got scales on the floor, scales on the tree, and we've also got the cone remnants.